Kathrine Switzer is on. Of course, she'll be someone that you recognize as part of our broadcast of the Boilermaker. Yesterday at the Boston Marathon, oh, Lord, the weather was rough. But there was a big winner yesterday on the women's portion of the race. The first American woman to win the Boston Marathon since 1985. Kathrine, good morning. Thanks for coming on the radio.
Good morning. How are you all? It was an amazing day in Boston yesterday, that's for sure.
How about the? I always enjoy the marathon when it falls on the 16th, after the 15th being on a Sunday, which means we get an extra day when it comes to having to file our taxes. That always comes in handy.
It comes in handy for the marathoners, too.
It does, yeah. It's Patriots Day, I believe, in Massachusetts. So how cold? I mean, it looked miserable. The weather looked like it was awful yesterday.
You have no idea. I mean, I'm spent all my training days, serious training days, many of them, in Syracuse, Buffalo, Utica. We guys know bad weather.
Yeah.
This was the worst conditions I've ever seen for running.
Wow.
And the wind was coming in off the sea, and it was blowing like a gale. And the wind chill was 29 degrees, and it was heaving rain in great waves, like waterfalls.
Yeah.
It was just incredible. And so there are 30,000 runners out there, and you have to hand it to the organization.
Yeah.
To double down and get all the tents, the heating tents up and stuff for these people, because there was hypothermia all along the course, and at the finish line, it was just. Gosh, it looked like a war zone.
Wow.
Yeah,
I heard
with everybody.
Tell me,
out,
we first of all, there was an American woman who won for the first time since 1985. That's big.
Yes.
Do you think the weather played a role in that?
Oh, it definitely did.
Yeah.
So let me talk about it, because I know her well, and then we are going to bring Roger Robinson on, our co-commentator for the Utica Boilermaker, who actually did research on the amazing number of American women who finished in the top 10, who are virtual unknowns, but not unknown now, but who beat all the elites, because the elites couldn't take the weather. But the woman who won deserved to win totally. In fact, she was my pick for a podium finish. Her name is Desiree Linden. She is from Rochester Hills, Michigan. Although she was, originally from Chula Vista, California, but she's done her training mostly in really bad conditions.
Okay.
So she's also what we call a grinder of a runner. And as she said, this was a grinder of a race. The women went out at such a slow pace because they stayed in a pack together to keep warm and to shelter from this incredible headwind. I mean, it was blowing them off the course practically. Friends of mine were telling me they could barely stand up in it. Anyway, but Desi, who is a really, really good tactician, she is a terrific runner. I mean, she's a two-time Olympian, but she doesn't have really fast finishing speed, and in fact 7 years ago lost the Boston Marathon by 2 seconds in a home stretch run, and just missed out because she just didn't have the turnover that some of the fast Kenyans did. Anyway, but she'd been working on that, but what paid off for her was her ability to read a course and read the weather, and at the right point in the race, when a few other runners broke and went out in the front, she just tacked along behind them, and then when she felt them fade, and they were fading rapidly because it was so cold, she just took over, and then she started pounding it out. It wasn't fast. In fact, the finishing time was 2:39. It was the slowest race for the women since 1978.
Wow.
But that just shows you how incredibly bad the conditions were, and how it played into her hands.
I got to tell you, when you think of the wind, if you were even here yesterday, the winds were just terrific. And just walking across a parking lot, you found yourself being blown around, or driving down the road, you're being blown around. I imagine the same thing happens to you. It has to when you're running a race.
Well, here's another example. The Karuri, who was last year's champion, took over the lead, with about a third of the race to go, and he was motoring. And we were on the photo bridge doing the TV commentary and saying, "Wow, he's got it, home and hose." He's there. And all of a sudden, with 3 miles to go, The guy completely fades. You know, obviously the hypothermia just hit him, and he was dead. He was dead on his feet, dragged his butt in, poor guy, and all credit to him, because most of the people who, when they hit that moment of intense hypothermia, just can't go any further, and they just fell by the wayside, literally just flying off like, like scales off the fish.
It's very, but at the end of the day, though, this is all part of sport, right? The elements play a role.
And you have to imagine, I mean, Shalane Flanagan, for instance, who was one of our top picks, actually was raised in the Boston area, born in Marblehead, Massachusetts. I mean, they got bad weather there. They really do. And then she goes and she lives out in Portland, trains at Nike. Portland has horrible weather. So when I interviewed her the day before the race, she said, "Hey, bring it on. This is my kind of weather." And she just folded. It was really amazing. She had on a windbreaker, she had on gloves, she had on a hat and earmuffs. So she wasn't though she was like running in a bikini or anything. She was really prepared. It was amazing. It was amazing. But I think, go ahead. Well, anyway, I think one of the best stories though is that a total unknown then gets second in the race. And the woman, I think, who was in fourth or fifth, ran her personal best, because these women were used to those conditions. Can I just put Roger on for a second and let him tell you about those?
Absolutely. I love it.
Because it just goes to show, if you dig down, you can make it happen, and sometimes the most amazing results are the consequence. Here's Roger Robinson.
Okay. And, of course, you'll recognize both Roger and Kathrine as part of our Boilermaker broadcast every year. Legendary in the sport of race. And, Roger, good morning. I'm glad to hear from you.
Good morning. We'll certainly be back in Utica for the Boilermaker this year. Really looking forward to it.
Tell me these conditions. Is it anything you'd seen before?
Well, I've lived in England, and I've lived in Wellington, New Zealand, which is one of the windiest places on earth. So I described the story I wrote for Runner's World, which was about these the other women, the lower placers that you want me to talk about. I described it as storm at sea weather.
Yeah.
If you can imagine those sequences in Hollywood movies when there's a storm and there's little blokes throwing buckets of water all over them from off the set. That's what it looked like. I mean, they were just bent over into it. And I was coaching a guy from New Paltz, New York, where we live, and he said there were times when he just had to put his head down and kind of gut into it and could hardly stand against the combination of wind and water when it was raining so hard. And one story I wrote for Runner's World afterwards, I said that what you learned from Des Linden, who won the women's race, was don't run through the deep puddles.
Yeah.
Tactics come into it. Run through deep puddles, you're actually slowing yourself down. But it was a day for the runners who stayed calm and just kept on plugging along. But one of the best stories was the Canadian woman who finished third, and you can tell, Canada, Brantford, Ontario, right by Lake Ontario. They know wind and rain. And she said, start off. She's 41 years old, and she said, "I'm mother of three, and the first two were boys." And she said, "When I had a girl for the third one, I didn't believe it for an hour that she was a girl." She said, "And that's what I feel like now."
That is very funny.
She said, "I didn't believe I was third until they showed it to me printed out on a list." And the others were all saying that they were in shock. They couldn't believe that, because you didn't quite know what was happening. In those conditions you couldn't see very well.
Sure.
And they might pass some stumbling figure, other runner with 2 miles to go. They didn't know that was Edna Kiplagat. Or Daska, the top Ethiopian. They were all over the place, and they didn't realize they got through as high as they did. One of them was an upstate New Yorker originally. She's living in Brooklyn now, but she's a nurse practitioner from she told me from Mount Morris, somewhere I think south of Rochester. She said.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so
it's funny how
came from places like that.
Yeah, it's funny how the elements played such a huge role in this. And before we let you go, I want you to brag just a little bit, if you could. Kathrine will be here in Syracuse really soon, right?
That's right. It's really good. She's going to be the commencement speaker for Syracuse University, which is a real honor. And she's going to talk in the stadium, which you'll be more familiar with from, I believe, the game played there.
Sure. Carrier Dome. Yep.
And there's going to be something like 12 or 14,000 people in there.
That's really that's a great honor, and so
it is. It really is.
Pass along our congratulations, sir.
If I can just add, because it's relevant to coming to the Boilermaker, I've got a book coming out called "When Running Made History," and that's being published by Syracuse University Press at pretty much exactly the same time.
Okay, that's awesome.
So that's a nice double for us.
That's awesome.
Just a footnote here, Bill. One of your photos, Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, is used in the book.
That's a photo by somebody called Bill Keeler, and he and I have corresponded about that book, and he very kindly gave me permission to use a brilliant photograph of the post-race Boilermaker party.
And it was only a 25% fee that I charged for that. It was just awesome
with royalties.
Well, Bill, judging from the usual sales of running books, what's 25% of $10?
Oh, it's just a little bit over my paycheck. So,
and then the final note for Kathrine and Roger, and with all due respect to Syracuse University, I'm more personally impressed by this note for Kathrine. She is giving the commencement at Syracuse this spring. She's running London next week. Is that right?
Wow.
Yes. I better get her back on. We're going to London. What's today? We're going tomorrow.
Yeah.
We go overnight. Can hardly believe we've got to get home first and then down to the airport. Yeah, she always wanted to run the London Marathon, and she said she was going to low key it. But the race let her in, and then, of course, when they let her in, they let the media know. So she's low-keying it to the extent of only giving, about 80 media interviews a day.
Wow, that is low-keying it. There's no doubt. Well, listen, Kathrine, we just want to congratulate you. The commencement at Syracuse University, that's a big deal as well. So congratulations on that.
It's massive for me. Yeah, it really is. Who would ever imagine that 50 years ago I graduated and from there and got my undergraduate degree, stayed on and got my master's, but I never in a million years, when I was sitting in that stadium, old Archbold Stadium, getting my degree and thinking that someday I'd walk across that stage as a speaker. That's amazing.
Well, listen, congratulations on that. We look forward to seeing how you do in London and, of course, seeing you here in Utica for the Boilermaker. And thanks for taking the time this morning.
Look forward to seeing you guys, and thanks again for this call.
All right, Kathrine. Thanks you so much. All right.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
All right, congratulations.